Hello, so this video is going to be about Postgres and Axum. So I've gone ahead and configured a Docker container to contain a database with a table. The table will be called notes. I've put a reference in my GitHub repo to the source, which there's a whole article, code, VOWEB, code for web. Anyway, I've used Cargo add sqlx-cli to create a migration, and then I've migrated, which basically a migration generates you a file which with a .sql extension, and it'll be called init.up.sql. And you need to go into that migrations folder, and you actually need to put in the syntax, the SQL syntax, to create a table with the various fields and field types. Once you've done that, you can do SQL migrate -r-init, and it will actually generate that table, and then you can go in and query it. So I've already done that. So what I'll do is I'll work backwards, if that's okay. So this is what I did to generate it. And then to actually just go in and inspect it, PSQL-h localhost, because it's running on effectively the local machine, -p for the port 5432. You may see some people use port 8080 or do forwarding to a different port, that's fine. And then just the username at the end, password, which is my secret password. That was the default when I connected. Sorry, that was the default with the Docker container that you get when you just do the standard Docker command to pull down the Postgres container. I'll show you that in a second. Then you can see we've got notes. So if the table notes is empty at the moment, but just look at it anyway. You see, got ID, title, content, category, published, created app. So that actually came from the migrations init.up.sql. So, or when you actually create the migration, it gives you this file, and then it's basically everything that I'm highlighting there was not present. So you add that in. So yeah, you also see that as well, which is the kind of like the byproduct of running it. The easiest way, not the easiest way, the best thing to do is actually experiment with it yourself. It's all very well watching someone else do a video of it, but it's not until you try it and then you find out there's always one thing that you miss. So yeah, you create the migration once you've done the migration, once you've run sqlx migrate, it's created the init.up.sql file. It'll have like a time and date prefix to it inside the migrations directory. So then you just go in and edit that with your favorite editor, paste in the SQL syntax for the table that you want to create, and yeah, and then you run it at the end with that syntax. So it's all here on Axum, RGGH, Axum YT, and I'm gradually building up these repos. So this video is currently based off of part 5. Since part 4, I've also added, so you see migrations has appeared. I've created web inside my source directory, which has got routes.rs. So routes will then it will then contain the routes for the route handler, which will then. So the whole point is to try and keep main fairly small as possible. Again, a lot of this I've learned from the Jeremy Chone videos, and also let me just show you that article. So the one that I've referred to, there's the link. I'm going to kind of try and just thin out certain parts of this because I really am trying to make this kind of as close to boilerplate as I can. So Rust CRUD API example with Axum and PostgreSQL. I want to keep it fairly lean because ultimately I'm going to be using Shuttle, which actually does a lot of the database configuration for you anyway. So um, yeah, I'm not going to go overboard with that. But yeah, the further down you get to where are we? Yeah, so I'll be basing my project quite a lot. Or oh, it's got a health check handler. Yeah, so I've again trying to keep it kind of minimalist. I've avoided using a Docker Compose YML file. I know that in the long run that actually saves you effort, but I'm trying to keep it to learning Axum and learning Rust. So that's the content. So that's exactly what I've got in my init.up migrations file there. It's a bit dark. It's not the greatest. I know I'm wearing sunglasses, but it's not. Yeah, it's not the most colourful. Um, so connect to it. So let me just go and show you. So I'd already actually written the code to connect. So if I do cargo run, you see I've already put in place the login, starting server running. I'm telling you the port, connecting to Postgres. Now this is kind of the other main part of today's update. This is kind of going to be a series of progress videos. In the past, I've made videos before, especially with Python, where I've basically built the whole project and then I've gone back and tried to make a video on it. You always miss stuff and you always end up just glossing over stuff. So I think it's better to just build it and record the bits as you go along. So this is the AppState, and the AppState, long story short, it's a way of avoiding using global variables to remember the connection. So it's remembering that it's connected. It's remembering the max connections. It's remembering all of this basically, and it can be passed around. The state will be passed to whichever. So you'll have many routes with your API. So each of the routes can reference AppState, and obviously it saves each route trying to do all of the database connection each time. Because without the AppState, you would have each function would need to connected database. Other than if you had global variables, which you don't want to be doing that. So if you look at the description down here, I've put in the Axum playlist. That's the other videos where I've used Axum. I've actually gone I've actually gone backwards a bit because some of my earlier videos I did some fairly what at the time I thought were fairly complicated Axum database stuff. So I built a website called FlightViz, which has thousands of records of YouTube videos that are indexed, and then you can search for the keywords if they feature in the transcripts. Anyway, back to AppState. So AppState, the concept of an AppState in Rust is similar to using global variable, but it often employs a struct for several reasons that enhance. So structs are just so widely used in Rust. So I'm not going to go through all this now, but I'll just go through the TLDR. This is taken from the Shuttle. So I'm being a bit of a magpie and I'm kind of picking information from various places, but this is from the Shuttle blog, which I showed in the previous video. So in Rust, most web frameworks, Axum included, we use what is called AppState, a struct dedicated to holding all of your variables that you want to share across your routes on the app. The only requirement to do this in Axum is that the struct needs to implement clone. So I'll show you the code. And AppState is in main, and there we go. Let me just zoom in and make that a bit bigger for you. So we see AppState is a struct. Sorry, that's reappeared again. It's because I clicked it. So we've got the app state, and we need to implement clone. I have implemented debug as well because I wanted to print it. So because I was doing the logging and so on, print app state. So that's why I put debug in as well. App state pool. So the app state is the name of the struct. Pool is actually the value. So the key is pool, and then the value is actually the Postgres connection pool. So you need to also reference that here. So use sqlx Postgres PG pool. So as with anything in Rust, Cargo.toml is probably for me it's almost the first thing I look at now, because you just want to see what you can look at that toml file and you can kind of almost work out what the code's doing. You can see that it's asynchronous. You can see that it's using Tokyo Tower Hyper. You can see it's running HTTPC test. Anyhow, so you can get a feel for what it's actually doing. So I always go to Cargo.toml first, really. So the other issue I've had, which I just wanted to cover, when I tried to make the GitHub action, what was it? When you go and try and make where is it? Add file. Maybe I need to do it here. Yeah, I tried using, I can't find it. I just want to add a workflow. Is it because I've zoomed in too much? No? My mind's gone blank. I've forgotten how to do the action. Create new file. Let's try and do it here. When I added one previously, it was doing all of the tests, but the tests were failing, and basically that is because yeah, it's running now, but it's empty. When I was running it previously, the workflow was failing because in my tests I was able to run them manually with the quick dev, but I hadn't actually put in the code to actually start the server and establish the connection to the database. So yeah, that's why I've not got the nice green parsing badge. Yeah, that's another thing for me to try and tick off. So I don't think in the first video I showed the static files working either. I don't think I did, so I'll just quickly cover that as well. So so server's running. It's actually got a database connection, but just to demonstrate that we don't actually need it. So let's go localhost 3000, and then if I do assets, there we go. This is an example of serving static files with Axum and Shuttle. So as you can see, that's got kind of some CSS going on there, and CSS it's actually Bootstrap, but it's in wrong one, assets. So assets index.html, and that's just a standard HTML page, and that's not the latest. That's main, that's old. So I updated that, and if you look at a more recent part 4, let's try and refresh. No, so it must be part 5. It's only on the most recent part. So I'm gradually, as I'm making, there we go. So on part 5, once you get to part 5, the branch P5, you'll see that I've added the style sheet. So that's why you see that there. If you view this, so yeah, that's by the by, because that's kind of, I've ticked that off now. So I'm gradually working through the items in the Shuttle, the Shuttle.rs website, where they've got kind of the AppState database, serve static files, route handlers. There's numerous things which they kind of cover with their tutorial. So I'm picking from that, and then I'm also sort of using my knowledge that I've picked up from watching the Jeremy Chone videos. So yeah, hopefully this is kind of an amalgamation of all the things I've picked up from other places, and I'm trying to simplify it so that it's boilerplate and also keep it fairly minimal, because I know that eventually I'm going to be deploying it to Shuttle. So once I deploy it to Shuttle, that will actually make some of the things I've done redundant, such as all of the Postgres configuration. So I'll just do a tree here as well. So 3. Maybe I'll just do 2. There you go. So that's the project directory structure. So we've got tests with the quick dev, which I've learned that from Jeremy Chone. Source and the main, and within the web there we've got the routes. The migrations, so I learned that from the website I've shown you. The assets, I've learned that from Shuttle. So yeah, Jeremy Chone, CodeVowWeb, and Shuttle. So I'm I'm not stealing other people's stuff, but I'm learning from them. So hopefully that's okay. That's cool. Yeah, one last thing. I did have a comment which was valid. Somebody said that in my previous video, the Git repo that I'd put onto Codeberg was being really slow. And I think that was just sod's law, because I released the video and pretty much within half an hour they had some sort of outage and they were really slow. I'm not writing them off. I probably will go back to them, but for the moment I will probably stick with GitHub with these all these different branches, and then I'll go back and upload this or push this to Codeberg as well. I do like Codeberg because they're open source. They're kind of not profit. They're kind of like foundation, and they're not going to be using my code, your code for anything nefarious or making big fat profits out of us at our expense and making us redundant. The AI thing, I don't know what any of you think about it, but it's always in the background now. You think, is what I'm learning going to be obsolete? Or even if it's not obsolete, will it just be automated? And even the Shuttle, some of the Shuttle projects, you can just spin up a to-do list, so an Axum, Postgres, Rust project. And yeah, so it's infrastructure as code. And ultimately, will intermediate, maybe senior level developers become sort of obsolete? Who knows? But I don't think we want to expedite our own downfall by. But the more code we put on GitHub, the more training data they've got. That's how I see it. But sometimes you just have to, live each day as you go. So I don't know. What do you think about it? Do you think AI is just gonna speed up and speed up? I mean, that's the concern, is that every day that goes by, it's just exponentially getting more dominant, and yeah, snowball effect, I guess. So a lot of humans, I've listened to people talking about how humans aren't very good at understanding exponentials. I don't know if you've ever heard the story about putting a grain of rice on the first square of a chessboard, and then you double it on the next square, double that on the next square. By the time you get to the end of the chessboard, you're 3 meters deep in grains of rice across the exponential effect is. So yeah, if machine learning goes at that same rate, we're probably all in trouble. But if we take the view that Rust is going to be one of the dominant languages, I think it's probably still going to be good to know for a few years to come. So that I think, and also I was starting to watch something earlier where it was a video by somebody saying that there will always be work for embedded devices because they are a bit more unique. So, for instance, if you ask ChatGPT to write some Rust code for some bespoke hardware that's only just been developed, then it won't have had any training data, and it won't know what libraries to use, or it won't know what inputs and outputs and the formatting and so on to use. So it won't know what field types to use in the struct that get passed to certain pins and registers and all that. So yeah, what do you think? I'm almost in the dark about this because I've almost started to ignore it because there's just so much noise with AI and there's always something new every day. And if you were just permanently watching and reading about the latest AI thing, you would actually not learn anything substantial. You wouldn't, for instance, you wouldn't learn about trait-bound syntax, or you wouldn't learn about how to um, do logging in Rust, or you wouldn't learn how to do a compiled version for a release and so on. You wouldn't know like the important things that are actually. For instance, if AI got switched off tomorrow, not that it will, but a lot of people would probably just be lost now because they've spent the past few years purely focusing on AI, and they're almost tied to the frameworks that they've been subscribing to, for want of a better word. Whereas if you take the view that what if the internet was to be switched off tomorrow, um, even with this project, I could carry on because I've got all my imports. I've got a Docker image. Um, I've actually got a book about Rust. So yeah, well, it's worth bearing in mind. Could you survive a week without the internet? Who knows? I think we all would and all could, but it it would impact some of us more than others. And I think you need to take the view that even with regard to, so I was watching somebody and they were saying they were reluctant. It might have been Trevor Sullivan, another good channel to watch if you're into Rust channels and Rust videos. He said he tries not to, or I forget his exact words, but where possible, don't use a library or don't use a crate. Um, yeah, sometimes you're reinventing the wheel, but other times it's good just to be able to write the bits you need without having to rely on like crates, and even changing the color of text. You don't have to use colorized. So yeah, just food for thought really. So yeah, I've rambled a bit here, but hopefully you're to actually code live would actually make probably quite a boring video, especially with my typing capabilities. But if you go to part 5, which I've just shown, yeah, part 5, you'll get the boilerplate with the connection to. I'll just show you I'll show the database connection part, and then I'll wrap it up. So at the moment the database connecting bit is still in main, which ultimately it probably needs refactoring and putting somewhere else. But for now, so I've just got the tracing and the logging starting there. The database connection string. So that would be reading from an environment variable. That needs formatting. Sorry about that. Unwrap. So basically, it's going to try that. Otherwise, it will try this, and then this will succeed because that actually is my secret password is the correct password. That's the correct port, and so on. So once it's connected, max connection's 5. You saw that. That was actually what gets stored with the state. How does it get stored by the state? I nearly missed talking about that. So you need to add on, this is the important line 66, with state. So with state, and then the app state. And the app state is basically the struct, which which I created, and that's a struct which gets referenced in the paragraph that I read where it said to rather than using global variable, you create a struct to store the state, and the state is basically here is just storing. So you could have other keys and values here. I'm just storing the database state here, but you could have other things as well. Don't ask me what things, but I know that you could and probably will have other things that get stored in the state. Basically, any not constants, but anything that would be a global variable, you would want to store there. That was the Nest service. That was what I added to allow the assets, the static files to work. So these two lines, if you take nothing else from this video, these two lines are really the important ones. So Nest service is what enables the static files to work. So we can serve static files, HTML files, and then with state, which stores the state. At the moment, that's not of much benefit because I haven't added many or any other routes. So in part 6, I will be adding more routes. So at the moment, I've just got the hello world route. And the function's called hello world. And then if you noticed in my main, I'm actually using use create web hello world. And then it gets used just there on line 64. So again, probably worth downloading this, running it yourself. I think as long as you get the Docker image, it should be fine. Even without the Docker image, it should still start to compile. And I've put the notes in there for starting up Docker. So the Docker image, you just go to you need to install Docker on your machine, and then you just do Docker pull Postgres, I think it is. And at the moment it's running like version 14, and you just saw I did get that error message about got two windows open here. I did get that error message about let's just do Docker PS. Yes, it's running. When I did, oh, it was when I did the I know it is. It was here, wasn't it? When I did the migration, it gave me an error message about I'm currently running version 14 and it should be using version 16, something to that effect. But yeah, there's so many different versions of Postgres. It's kind of yeah, that's whole nother video, whole nother story. Which the purpose of this is just to actually get to do the bare minimum. So you got boilerplate, which will then allow you to get up and running with this code, and you can start doing stuff. So in the next video, I'll be adding the routes that will then allow us to start adding or inserting, deleting, selecting stuff from the database. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back in a day or two with more progress. Thank you.